Hello there, good evening. The Green Party leadership has warned the SNP government not to take their votes for granted when it comes to passing this year's budget. At their autumn conference, they warned the First Minister they are the only party to have ever brought down an SNP budget. Meanwhile, a planned vote which would have likely seen support for a national care service abandoned was delayed until tomorrow. From Greenock, here's our political correspondent, Andrew Kerr. A 52-year-old man remains in hospital after a firearm was discharged at a property in Glasgow yesterday afternoon. Hundreds of pro-Palestinian demonstrators gathered outside the BBC Scotland building in Glasgow this afternoon to protest against the media coverage of the Israel-Gaza war. Conservative leadership hopeful Kemi Badenoch has ruled out devolving immigration law to Holyrood. You can watch that interview on the Sunday show tomorrow morning on BBC One Scotland. Now, Inverness Caledonian Thistle have lost their first game since entering into administration. Positive spirits there. Now, Christopher's here with the weather.
Hi, Hope. Thanks very much for now. Hope.
OK, thanks. That's all for now. Our next update is tomorrow evening. Good night. Iran has condemned last night's Israeli airstrikes on the country. Israel says it carried out precise and targeted attacks, a retaliation for Iran's missile strikes on Israel earlier this month. Israel says the strikes were on 20 military and missile manufacturing sites by 3 waves of fighter jets, with some reports of up to 100 Israeli jets involved. The specific locations of the attacks are yet to be confirmed, but reports say that military installations in the capital Tehran and military bases in the provinces of Alam and Khuzestan in the southwest of the country were hit. Iran says 4 army officers were killed as a result. According to the Pentagon, the US was briefed on the strikes beforehand but didn't have any involvement in the operation. Both Britain and the United States have urged Iran not to strike back. Here's Jeremy Bowen with the latest. Now, the Chancellor is set to increase the national insurance rate for employers in Wednesday's budget. Rachel Reeves is also expected to bring down the threshold at which businesses start having to pay it. The 2 measures are expected to raise around £20 billion for public services, including the NHS. Here's the BBC's business correspondent, Mark Ashdown. Some of the day's other news now, and a 52-year-old man has been taken to hospital following a report of a firearm being discharged at a property in Glasgow. Now, the Green Party leadership has warned the SNP government not to take their votes for granted when it comes to passing this year's budget. At their autumn conference, they warned the First Minister they are the only party to have ever brought down an SNP budget. Meanwhile, a planned vote, which would have likely seen support for a national care service abandoned, was delayed until tomorrow. From Greenock, here's our political correspondent, Andrew Kerr. Conservative leadership candidate Kemi Badenoch was in Glasgow today meeting party members. You can watch the extended interview on the Sunday show tomorrow morning on BBC One Scotland. Now, Inverness Caledonian Thistle have lost their first game since entering into administration earlier this week. Time for some other news, sport news now, and today marks the first new firm derby of the season. Jimmy Tillene's unbeaten Aberdeen are playing host to former Dons boss Jim Goodwin's Dundee United at a sold-out Pittodrie. Aberdeen are piling on the pressure. Sione Tuipulotu has led the Glasgow Warriors to a bonus point victory against the Stormers in South. And now the weather with Christopher. And just before we go, I'll let you know Aberdeen has scored to make it 1-0 with 5 minutes to go. Goodbye.